Alright, so what is your name?
Amy Ellery.
And who, like, what rank were your parents? What branch of the military were they in? What was their job? Where did they serve? When? All that good stuff.
Um, my mom was a Army lieutenant. My father was an Army captain with the 101st Airborne. They were both intelligence officers. And they were in post-war Germany when Germany was still pretty bombed.
So, like, was Germany still recovering from World War
Oh
II?
yeah,
Like,
very much so.
what was the atmosphere they were working in?
Well, they were in Munich, which was not as destroyed as other places. Um, the countryside around and anywhere there'd been manufacturing was definitely in the recovery. They were there in the late 40s, early 50s. Um, my dad was a tank commander and did border patrol on the Russian-German border. And my parents actually watched the razor wire go up between East and West Berlin. So before there was a wall.
Right.
um, yeah, I mean, some of the stories were pretty horrific.
So would you say, like, that what your parents saw influenced you at home?
Definitely. My dad got out. He did not agree with the things that the government was doing at that time. I found out many years later they were repatriating and giving new identities to German scientists and people that would have been tried now as war criminals. And of being in intelligence, he knew all of this and didn't agree with it and got out. He was an engineer by trade. And I remember when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened. And he truly believed it was going to happen. Um, Having an insight into backdoor policies and things like that. He didn't agree with any of this stuff, but I remember, turning the basement into a bunker and buying, all kinds of food and water and dried milk and whatever you could, keep, um, and sleeping down there in the basement while that decision was being made on whether or not we were going to bomb, Cuba and whether we were going to get bombed back. It was a very tense time. They saw the beginning of the Vietnam War, and my father basically said the same thing that he had about Korea, that it was no place that we should have been. We weren't allowed to do our jobs, and again, there was all that backdoor stuff. Um, the news made it different because every night we sat and watched the news in black and white, and I had friends who had dads who were in Vietnam, and everybody was plastered around the television because they would show the clips of the soldiers, hoping that maybe their loved one would show up, on TV. And the war correspondents by then had a lot more privilege, so they were showing, the death and the destruction and whole villages just wiped out down to the last child.
Right.
They even killed the dogs. It was just horrific.
So on that note, one of the things that we went over in my class was how the United States military doesn't really step in and didn't really intervene. Would you say that the problems your dad had and the things that you saw growing up were more a course of the military being bad people and just wanting to kill things, or a course of government?
It was definitely a course of government. Um, military do what they're told. There's an old saying, old men start wars, young men fight them. And the reason we weren't successful in Vietnam, the reason the attrition rate was so high was because our generals were not allowed to do what what they'd been tasked to do. World War II was different because everybody had a common goal. They wanted Hitler, they wanted Mussolini, they wanted, there was a bond there, and we were allowed to do. It shows when you're allowed to do it. I don't know if I ever told you, but your grandmother's baby sister, my great aunt, her husband was a full guard colonel and was stationed in Japan right after we bombed. And the devastation and the things that she saw. But again, the military was given the ability to do what it was supposed to do in Japan, and we helped them rebuild. Um, it's never, the soldiers are never the bad people. It's the people that make the decisions for what the soldiers are supposed to do. American soldiers are not, they're not set up to fire on a pregnant woman. But when you've got a pregnant woman walking into a military camp saying she needs help and she's got dynamite strapped to her so she can blow up a few sailors and soldiers, or a shoeshine boy willing to blow himself up with a bomb in his shoeshine kit. You know, American soldiers don't see children as threats. They don't see women as threats. And that was, at that moment, that should have been a big, you know, high five to get out, that we weren't wanted.
So were these things that your parents told you about, or things you've read about? Like, where did you
No,
hear
these
this?
were things my parents told me.
Okay, so they saw these things happening.
They saw these things. You have to understand, too, that when I was in college, before I married my first husband, who was a career naval officer, my classmates were Vietnam vets coming back, going back to school on the GI Bill. And some of the things they told me are not the kind of things that you make up. You know, they came back different people, they had PTSD. They didn't understand how, if an American soldier went to a village to check and make sure, you know, get directions or make sure they were, you know, in where they were supposed to be, if a Viet Cong were watching, the Viet Cong would come in right after that, accuse the entire village of being sympathizers and kill them. I mean, we don't have a concept for that kind of destruction. We don't understand how, because we're both Vietnamese, but you're from the north and I'm from the south, we're going to kill each other.
So you mentioned like the people walking into camps with bombs. Would that be the worst experience that you heard about from your parents, or was there something a little?
No, there were some pretty horrible things. Just like the Germans, the Japanese, the Chinese don't honor. Well, at that time, the Germans didn't honor the Geneva Convention, and prisoners of war were pretty much considered excess baggage, so you could do to them whatever you liked. So some of the things that my dad physically saw were POWs that had been rescued, that were working with the government at that time, and he said that you could look at these people and they were still haunted. The stories that they told about what was done to them, because they were no longer human beings, they were things. I think that's probably one of the worst things that war does.
So aside from all of the grim stories, what was something happy that your parents told you about their experience, or something good they got from it?
Watching schools go up. It didn't happen in Korea and Vietnam and Afghanistan and Iraq, but when my dad had leave, they would travel throughout Europe. And if you were an American, and of course they were wearing a lot of times in uniform, you got the best table, you got service, you got big smiles. These were countries that were practically destroyed, you know, their economics and everything else, and Americans were heroes. They were saviors. They'd done the big bad and got, you know, taken care of business. We built schools. We flew doctors, and Navy doctors and Army doctors donated their time and supplies in hospitals that had just been overrun. We inoculated, you know, vaccines. There were hundreds and thousands of things that we did to help those people, and they appreciated it. You know, we were the good guys.
So, just to close this off, I see that you're wearing scrubs. So since I know what you do, and it does relate to this, why don't you tell everyone else why you are wearing the scrubs?
I just got off work. I work at the VA hospital in Reno.
What does that mean?
What do you mean?
Like, what is the VA hospital? Not people know that.
The Veterans Administration
Okay.
is a non-military. It's run along military guidelines, but it is a non-military facility, which is specifically for the care of veterans. We have various units. One, the CLC, which is the unit I work in, is long-term, and so I speak with vets on a daily basis that span. We have the oldest vet, and last remaining World War I vet, who passed away in our CLC. I've had 2 Navajo wind talkers who have been guests in our facility. I've had Korean, I've had World War II, I've had Vietnam, you name it. They come in for rehab, they come in for surgeries. Sometimes they just have complications because they're sick and they need long-term care. But that's what they do. In order for us to take care of you, you have to have served honorably in the armed forces. And it's a privilege.
And why did you decide you wanted to work at the VA given what, like growing up with the military, is that why you decided to work there?
It's a special group of people. They all have that one thing in common. They all serve. My father passed away in a VA hospital after a very long, very bad illness, one which he caught during his service time in Europe from the unclean water.
Which was, would you say that's common with some of the vets that you see now, is they've contracted illnesses from war? So that would be one of the casualties to our soldiers?
Yeah, Agent Orange, unclean water. Gotta understand, when we went from World War II, Korea and Vietnam were guerrilla warfare. So sometimes these guys would be out in the bush for days. You don't always have your water pills to sanitize your water. You run out of stuff. You do the best you can with what you've got. And yeah, I'm in school. One of the cancers in one of my oncology books is called glioblastoma. It's very slow growing, and it's called glioblastoma because it's shaped like a butterfly in the very front. And it is considered a very rare cancer. I have lost track of the cases. We're treating it as a side effect, possibly of Agent Orange. These guys have damage down on the genetic levels. They practically slept in this stuff. The other thing you're seeing is vets coming in with immunosuppressive disorders because, and again, I want to stress this, the thing with biological weapons, you can't always test the injections and things you give. You do the best you can with what you've got. The bottom line is a soldier can always refuse to take them. They're not ordered that they have to take them. But it's the best defense you're going to have if you get hit by a biological. Unfortunately, it's extremely possible that they have side effects. As I said, immunosuppressive disorders, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. People are popping up with things that normally you don't see in young, at a certain age. They've got Parkinson's kind of symptoms. They have, the list is just endless. Unfortunately and fortunately, it used to take a long time to get an exposure correlated with an illness so that it was military related. And the military, because of politicians, kind of clamped down on saying, yeah, this was an active battle zone. Yes, we actually dropped Agent Orange here. Yes, we actually inoculated here for biologicals. So you have to have the information to make a decision and understand what it is you're working with. That process has gotten shorter and more streamlined. The VA has, as an organization, has stepped up to take care of homeless vets who usually are homeless because of severe PTSD. They were not readjusted when they got back into society. They started using drugs and drinking heavily, and I had nightmares after some of the things I was told. I couldn't imagine trying to live with it and be even semi-normal. I've had veterans who were successful business owners who still have nightmares and night sweats and come sitting straight out of the bed, not knowing their wife, not knowing their family members, because they're trapped in that loop. So, all I can say is that anything, you take this fresh-faced 18-year-old kid and you drop him in the middle of that, what do you expect? The horrors they've seen. And usually they don't talk to anybody, but they talk to us because we're their caregivers. As a general rule, we have a lot of our nurses who have military experience. A lot of our doctors have had military experience. Or in my case, it's a multi-generational family thing. I was married to a career military for quite a few years. My parents, everyone in my family served, and as you well know, because of your father's heritage, we've lost someone in every war since the Revolution on both sides of the family. So I see us as very patriotic. We're very supportive of our soldiery. I'm not always happy with my government. That's the bottom line. And I don't think this has to continue. I've talked to a lot of people, and it's like, we can't keep them from killing each other. We've got to promote understanding. I mean, these poor young soldiers walk in on mass graves, and that's happening to this day. And there's no reason for it. They're not even sure why it happened. They're there as peacekeepers. They're there as police. They're there to try to make things better, and calm a region down that is just in complete chaos. And they always end up being the bad guys. And they feel that. So, yeah, if this project of yours can do anything to help promote understanding with those who don't have the close ties to the military, I wish you well, and I hope this helps.